It is essential for building self-confidence. It's essential for building self-respect. It's essential for creating a relationship with yourself where you are someone that is trustworthy and reliable. And that is keeping promises to yourself. Today I'm going to be diving into an example of a promise that I almost broke, but didn't. And we're going to be talking about the importance of keeping promises to yourself and the one aspect of this particular habit that often gets overlooked, but is incredibly important for seeing success long term. All right, stay tuned. Welcome to the Mindset Gym podcast, where we exercise your way of thinking to help unlock your hidden potential. I'm your host, Emily Irwin, a registered nurse and holistic nutritionist with a passion for all things health, fitness, and personal development. All right, let's get into it. Hi guys, welcome back to the Mindset Gym podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and for spending time with me today. I am going to start this episode off by telling you a story about something that I did a couple of days ago. And keep an open mind as you're listening to it, because at first glance, it's going to seem like there isn't a whole lot of significance about this story. But there's a reason that I'm telling you this. And it's because of something in it that I think is very often overlooked. So I'll start off by painting a picture of what I was doing. So I coordinated my kind of cardio running days during the gym on my days off from work, specifically so I could go for longer hikes, because I really like to do that on my days off. So a couple of days ago, I drove to Gatineau Park. And if you don't know where it is, I'll kind of describe to you the settings of what was going on. And so what I'll typically do is I will park at the visitor center and I will hike up to Pink Lake, hike around Pink Lake, and then come back. And that is a little under a 20-kilometer round trip. And so that's typically the loop that I do. That's typically what I do every time that I go there. And I happened to get there this particular morning, and I had a little bit more time than I typically do. I ended up leaving earlier than I had initially planned, and I'll kind of try and time what I'm doing so that I can leave by like 2:30 at the latest, because I don't want to drive home in rush hour traffic, because it's a nightmare trying to drive home from Quebec in rush hour traffic. Anyways, I got there earlier and I realized as I pulled in that I was going to have a little bit more time than I typically do. And so I said to myself, you know what? Why don't we take this opportunity to go a little bit further than you typically do? Let's go to Pink Lake, do the typical loop that we typically do. And then we're going to go past that to the next hiking trail, which in this case is Mackenzie King. And so again, if you're not familiar with this park, there is a path from Pink Lake that goes through the forest to the next hiking trail, which is about 3 kilometers one way. And so it would have added, give or take, 6 kilometers to my entire round trip. And so I decided when I pulled in, this is what I was going to do. This was my plan. So I start walking, and as I'm getting close to Pink Lake, I'm going down a hill and my foot kind of slips, and I can immediately feel my right foot starting to blister. And so in order to compensate for the fact that this blister was hurting my foot, I was kind of favoring that leg a little bit. And because of that, my left hip started to cramp up. And so I'm kind of hobbling down the path at this point. I'm in a little bit of pain. But we get to Pink Lake, looked around the lake, took some pictures, did my thing, whatever. And then it came time to go to the next hiking trail, Mackenzie King. And so I start walking down the path through the forest to get there. And I get about 15 minutes down the path and I run into a couple of guys doing construction. And I realize that there's no way for me to go through and to continue going down this path the way that I had planned. And so the only way that I was going to be able to get to the second hiking trail was to turn around, backtrack the 15 minutes down this path that I had already done, backtrack a little bit to go back to Pink Lake, and then go out the parking lot for Pink Lake and take the road. And so this adds an unknown amount of time to my hike, because I first of all have to backtrack some of the way that I've already done. And I also have no idea exactly how far it is down the road from Pink Lake to Mackenzie King, because it's a different route than I was planning to take. And there was no signs to tell me exactly how long that was going to be. And so you're probably hearing this and thinking, well, you've already done give or take 20 kilometers. You've already gotten to the place that you typically go to. Why don't you just turn around and go back to your car? Great question. And that crossed my mind as well. When I ran into the guys doing construction on the path, my immediate thought was, well, this is good enough. We came pretty far. This was still a great hike. I could just turn around, go back to my car, and call it a day. But I didn't. And I didn't for one specific reason. And it wasn't because there was some spectacular thing at Mackenzie King that I needed to see. It wasn't like there was something there that I was just absolutely dying to go there and take photos of or anything. There wasn't anything like that. And it wasn't because this extra 6 kilometers was going to be, life-changing for my health and fitness. If anything, it held me back a little bit because it took me about a day and a half to recover from this whole ordeal. No, it wasn't any of that. So the reason I did this was because I made a promise to myself when I pulled into the parking lot that is what I am going to do. And when the first thought crossed my mind of, well, this was good enough, let's just turn around and go back to the car, the second thought I had was, you are not someone who breaks promises to yourself. And so that was kind of when I realized it doesn't matter how long this is going to take. It doesn't matter if I'm sore already. It doesn't matter if it means that I'm going to be driving home in rush hour traffic. I made a promise. I have to follow through on it. So this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about today, because I think it's a very common discussion that keeping the promises you made to yourself is a really important thing to do. It is crucial for building self-confidence. It's crucial for building self-respect. It's crucial for creating that relationship where you feel that you are someone that you can trust and someone that you can rely on to follow through on the things that you want to do. It is so, so important, and it's something that I've talked about quite a bit. But I think there's an aspect of it that gets overlooked a little bit. And so that's kind of what I wanted to illustrate in this example. I think it's very easy to look at something like keeping the promises you made to yourself, and we immediately kind of think of those big rocks. Like if you started a program at school, following through and finishing that program, or speaking up in a work meeting because you said you were going to, or going to the gym because you said you were going to. Don't get me wrong, those big rocks are really important. It's super valuable. It's super important that you keep those promises and that you follow through on doing those things. And it's going to make such a big difference. But the other side to this that I think often gets missed is those much smaller rocks. Those kind of smaller, insignificant things that we think in the moment really isn't going to have a big impact on our life. It's really not going to be a huge change to who we are or to our future goals or anything like that. It's not going to have this giant impact. And so we often overlook the value of doing them. I'm going to give you a couple examples. So let's say you have decided that you're going to make your bed in the morning. And you wake up one morning and you're a little bit more tired than usual and you just don't feel like it. And so you get up and you leave your bed, just kind of everything thrown where it was when you woke up. That's one of those small promises that in the moment may not seem super significant. It may not seem like a huge deal for you to not follow through on that promise, but it's actually one of the most important ones. Because the thing is, you keeping promises to yourself only builds up that sense of confidence and respect and reliability in yourself if you keep at it consistently. Because you have to kind of build up this entire foundation of proof that you're someone who's trustworthy, you're someone that's reliable, you're someone that you have confidence in because you have all of this proof that you've followed through on all of these things. And in order to create that foundation, it's not just those big rocks that you do occasionally. It's all those tiny little ones that you stack up over time. So something like making your bed in the morning when you say you're going to, follow through on that. Something like in my case, where I said I was going to hike to this hiking trail, follow through on that. Say you were going to make a certain thing for dinner, follow through on that. If you say you're going to drink a certain amount of water on any given day, follow through on that. If you say you're going to reach out to this particular friend and catch up with them, follow through. If you say you are going to try speaking a little nicer to yourself, even if it doesn't feel supernatural in the moment, follow through. Follow through on all those tiny little promises that you made to yourself because they make such a big difference overall. One of my favorite sayings as it kind of relates to this whole topic is something that Rob Dial often says is the way that you do one thing is the way that you do everything. And that couldn't be more true in this case. And if you want to be somebody that has an easy time following through on those bigger rocks and on those bigger moments that are really going to have a more long-lasting impact on your overall life, you need to get comfortable following through on those promises by doing all these smaller things ahead of time. You get into the routine and you get into the rhythm of being someone that's going to follow through on the things that you say. So when it comes to encountering these bigger rocks, it's much more natural and it's much more in your nature to follow through on that. You're already kind of in that mindset. You've already built up that habit. So that's the reason why. That right there is the reason why I pushed myself to walk those extra 6-ish kilometers. I think it ended up being a little bit longer after the fact. Because I promised I would. And I knew in my head going into that if I turned around and I walked back to my car in that instant, while it would have saved me some time, and it probably would have saved me some sore legs and feet after the fact, I would have regretted the fact that I didn't. And I would have been disappointed in the fact that I didn't follow through on the thing that I said I was going to do. So make that your habit going forward. Make that kind of your non-negotiable. If you tell yourself you're going to do something, be the kind of person that follows through and tell yourself that you're the kind of person that follows through. If you need that kind of reminder in the moment to continue doing the thing that you're wanting to do, when it feels really hard to follow through, tell yourself that you are not someone who breaks promises to yourself, or tell yourself that I said I was going to do this. It's important. It's impactful. It's going to make a difference long term if I follow through because I am adding bricks to that foundation of proof that I am trustworthy and I'm reliable. And it's doing those things over time, repeating them and repeating them and repeating them is what is going to build that self-confidence and that self-respect. And you are going to end up over the years, after you've stacked up so much of this proof, you're going to end up showing up so much differently in the world because you're going to feel so much more stable in yourself. It's going to feel a lot more safe for you to set goals and go after them because you have a lot more trust in your ability to follow through. It's going to feel a little bit less scary to take on new goals and challenges because you have all this proof. You have all this proof that you are someone who's disciplined enough to follow through on the hard things and to get them done, even when you don't feel like doing them, because you said you would. Okay? So I want you to think about that. Reflect on it. Reflect on maybe a time in your life when there was a small promise you made that maybe you skipped over or decided not to do because it felt insignificant in the moment and it felt like it wouldn't make a big difference long term. I would love to know if there is a moment like that for you, or if there's one that you're working on. If there's something maybe like making your bed every morning, or trying to drink a certain amount of water every day, or trying to add a vegetable to every meal that you make. Maybe there's some sort of small promise that you're currently working on following through with. I would love to know. So let me know in the comments if this is something that you're working on. And just remember, going forward, no matter how big, no matter how small, no matter how silly or insignificant it may seem, if you made a promise to yourself, follow through. Follow through. Because you are not a person who breaks promises to themselves. Okay? Thank you so much for listening and for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode. If you like the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, or share the show with a friend. Your support allows this show to reach even more amazing people just like you, and it means the absolute world to me. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time at the Mindset Gym.